right, so what is a quote? Hopefully you guys already know this and went over the material, but quotes are direct, exact words from a text or media. It has to be exact. You cannot change one word, you cannot change a punctuation, you cannot anything without like showing that you changed that, okay? So why should we use quotes anyways when they're so difficult to use, difficult to cite? It really does give you credibility. It does prove your point. It sort of continues that larger conversation, right? You can see this person actually said these words. It shows that you know what others have said. Sometimes it actually creates some kind of humor or sets the tone, and it really does help you build interest. This is one of the most important questions, is when should I use quotes? And my number one thing is sparingly. I think one of the things students notice when I'm working with them one-on-one is how incredibly small the quote is, usually when I help them formulate it. You do not need this really long quote. You need the most important part. So use them sparingly. Number two, when you must use that exact language, use a quote when it is funny, it is really important, the way it's said, it just can't be said any other way. It's like magical, right? Or you need to analyze that passage, especially if you're working with some kind of text that's like literary or something like that. In general, quotes should be brief, right? Only use a long quote if you are very purposeful. You need to have a reason that you're using it. If you don't know why you're using that quote, if it's just to make your paper longer, then it's not really going to communicate the ideas that you want to. Your audience is going to say, why did this person just throw a big quote in? I could have just read that myself. They want you to really interpret it, right, for them. But how do I use quotes, right? Quotes are very difficult to use. You're going to use them in what is called a quote sandwich. I got permission from the author to actually show this to you guys, but I think this is a really great little, infographic showing how to use quotes, and that top piece, right, is your bread, right? It's the introduction. It's you setting up the quote. The quote is the meat part, right, that meaty part. And then the bottom piece is what helps explain it and tells you why that quote is important. Okay, so it's kind of a two-parter in that last part. You always want to explain the quote, and then you want to say why you're putting that in there, okay? So imagine, I don't know if any of you have ever really tried to cut your carbs and you try to eat only one slice of the bread. Not very easy, right? It's a lot easier when you have those two top parts that you can really eat. You can really dig into that quotes. The first thing you want to do is you want to use a lead-in phrase. You want to introduce that quote. Quotes cannot just dangle in the middle, right? They cannot be orphans just hanging out there. You have to connect them to a sentence and to that paragraph. It's almost like they need to be rooted. So that's why I put a little plant there. I am here on our assignment sheet, and on there I actually put some lead-in verbs for you. So these are some of the verbs that you might want to use to help you lead in. So you might say the author admits, the author declares, the author observes. And so you can use this to signal the quotes coming, and you can also use them afterwards to explain the quote a little bit. Okay, so these are some of the things that you're going to want to use, according to, etc. Now, if you go to the quotes, paraphrasing, summarizing, quoting page, the read and watch page, and you go click on the quotes tab, if you scroll down, you will see that there are some templates for you that are actually created. It says, what X's point here is, demonstrates, etc. I also connected you to this page here. I will make sure that I point that out a little bit better, which is like formatting for short quotes, and it shows you how they put it together. Chang emphasized that, right? The weight training for women claimed that engaging in weight-bearing exercises. So do you see how like it sets it up? These quotes are not orphans sitting there all by themselves. In Chang's 2008 text, Weight Training for Women, she asserts engaging in weight-bearing exercise, single most important, right? Then there is the health, right, quotation. We don't actually put the page number for MLA, but the idea is the same, and gives you all different kinds of ways that you can put this together. You can keep it as a form of templates. So after you have that top part, that bread, right, that lead-in, next comes the quote. So quotes must use quotation marks. You have to put quotation marks around something that is an exact quote, right? You must be exact. You have to use word for word. You cannot change anything. It must be part of a sentence. You cannot just have a quote, even if the quote is a complete sentence. You cannot just put the quotation marks around it and slap it in your paper. It has to be part of a larger sentence, or else it's really functioning as a fragment. You also need to provide a citation. And how you do this is you put the last name of the author and the page number. This is MLA style. This is how we do it for this class. Later on, you may do APA style, which I have done many times before too in my linguistics classes. So just know for this class, this is how we do it. And then you want to put the period after the parentheses. All right, so you may want to kind of note this part of the video and come back. Also, these slides are available to you. If you click on the page, it should still be there for you. Always explain and connect your quotes. Quotes do not ever speak for themselves. A lot of people will say, oh, but it was obvious. It might seem obvious to you, but you don't want the reader or the audience, right, to interpret it their way. You want the audience to interpret it your way. That's why you give them that explanation and connection. An argument's sort of like a game, right? You're trying to get someone to think like you think, and that's why you always want to really explain and connect. So what should you say in that connection and explanation? I remember feeling really insecure about that myself. Some of the things you're going to do is kind of rephrase and explain the quote to your audience, and then you want to tell them very specifically, like as if you're really holding their hands. Tell them how it connects to what you're trying to prove or say. And you're going to see, like, right now how I actually do that. So it's time. Let's go ahead and practice making our quote sandwich. All right, so I am here on the reading page that I annotated, and I'm going to look through and decide, what do I want to use for a quote? What can't be said any other way?
So I think I'm going to go with this here.
Right, where I said, I didn't actually underline this, but I like, if you lost your molars or ground them down as a child or teenager, your wisdom teeth are there to fill in the gap. So that seems the real purpose of wisdom teeth. And then I kind of like the way that they say it, like, fill in the gap, right? I didn't say that myself in the same way. They talk about children and teenagers. So I'm going to actually use that particular quote. So here, let's go ahead and put it together. So go back to your Google Doc. I'm going to kind of use some of what I set up here and then put it together. Maybe say something like, the purpose of wisdom teeth appears to be to provide extra teeth when our ancestors lost molars to the hard foods that they ate. According to the article, why do wisdom teeth come in so late? Okay. The article, because I always want to contribute it back to the article proposes that, quote, if you lost your molars or ground them down as a child or teenager, your wisdom teeth are there to fill in the gap. Okay, so now we need to make sure we go back and put the author's name in there, because who is the author?
Oh, it says just live science.
Okay, so when we don't have an author, then you're going to move to that next thing, which is, why do wisdom teeth come in so late? And that's what I would put in the parentheses, but I'm going to not put it in there. I don't need it, considering that I already added it in there. Okay, so let's pretend if I'd had an author, I would write author here. I don't, so we would do it something like that. And now I'm going to go ahead and explain it. Let's say, in other words, let's see, what is it really saying? Just in case our ancestors lost some teeth, they still could eat their hard food with their wisdom molars and continue to survive. And there's my quote right in there, and it's explained and it's also set up so everything flows really nicely. So before we move on, I just want to try a little bit of a bonus here. We're going to try a quote within a quote. This is the perfect article for that, because as you can see, there's lots of people quoted in here, and I want to show you how to do that. Google Doc. And you can see a quote within a quote. This is available to you also because you have the slides there. Here's from the article, and you can see this is support for what's the purpose of wisdom teeth. And I go down here, I put the same thing that we had before, and I say, the article explains that according to oral surgeon Steve Kupferman, wisdom teeth, okay, and you can see right here, I added this in there because it makes everything flow a little bit more nicely, and we know what I'm trying to talk about. So if you put it in brackets like that, it says, this was not originally in the text this way, but I need it to make everything flow correctly, okay? So I put quotation mark, and then look at this. It's really tricky right here, but kind of fun. there is a quotation mark and then a single quotation mark. So what happens is, in a quote within a quote, you put a quotation mark to show that you're quoting, and then the single quotation mark, the one single quotation, is the quote within that larger quote. And I just keep saying quotes over and over again. But you can see that that's what it looks like. That's because if within your larger quote, you end the quote, you end that with only a single quotation mark, okay? You finish the quote, and then the double quotation marks go after that. Okay, so you can see that. And here I put, so Stephen Pepperman said, wisdom teeth were meant as a kind of backup for somebody who may have lost another tooth, right? And we put the author if we had it. We don't have it in this particular case. Essentially, this prevented our ancestors from starving because they had no way to chew and process their food, okay? So there's a quote within a quote. It is available to you guys, and you kind of have an idea of how you might want to do that.